while we're waiting here, I wanted to run through some things with y'all. As everybody noticed out in front when you registered, or our athletic trainers, we're giving them all to our Methodist athletic trainers, but also to you guys. And the reason of these aren't so much as to like say, hey, here, go to a Methodist ER. It's a notebook for you to be able to keep and utilize when necessary for those emergency situations. So obviously, there is a lot of information in that document that is more on the emergency side. So when you are potentially calling that EMS, or when you are potentially talking to or sending a kid to an ER, this is something that you can now have that documentation of your emergency medicine that you've ran through with them, and you can show that as basically a handoff sheet to the ER or to the EMS. One of these things that we brought through, like as last year when we had Brandon Miller talk with us on some EMS stuff, some advanced EMS stuff, and some handoff stuff, was that one of the things that they don't see enough of from these emergency medicine runs when they're dealing with athletic trainers is some of those blood pressure, heart rate, respiratory rate, those things that when you're actually trending an athlete and trying to think about some sort of trauma could actually come into it as a factor, and a really big factor. So it's a really good aspect that you can keep. You can have a tear-off sheet that you hand with that kid. This isn't obviously meant as something that you send with every kid or write one up for every athlete that you're doing an eval on an ACL. This is those emergency situations that might be a little easier for you. And then especially if they're coming with us or to us to a Methodist ER, it's going to be that handoff to even a bigger red light or a whatever, a signal to say, hey guys, this is an athlete, this is a student athlete that's been evaluated by an athletic trainer. We need to get a hold of Sam or Lauren or somebody like that. This may be a VIA patient that wasn't VIA'd or wasn't taken care of correctly, so that we can then turn around and get information back to you from that ER. So I wanted to share that with you guys. I know there's probably people are like, what is this? In the EMS world, they have a lot of these handoffs, and they utilize a lot of these handoffs, but this is one that we developed. If you have any ideas, see problems with it, let us know. We're always willing to jump ahead and try to add new things to it and adjust what we're doing. So I think our leadership panel is all here now, so I'm going to let everybody kind of move to their seat or their spot and have a spot, have at it. And then what I'm going to ask of everybody is, that I guess we will start with Mark on Mark's end and let everybody introduce themselves.
Do I have to turn this on? No, we're live, huh?
Live and living color.
Perfect. My name is Mark Powell, and I'm the head athletic trainer here at Trinity, and I also am the co-director of Methodist Sports Medicine.
I'm Jeremy Urban. I'm the head football coach here at Trinity University, and get to work with this gentleman every day.
I'm Major General retired Pat Hamilton, U.S. Army. David Schmidt asked me to come here today and talk a little bit about leadership from a different perspective, and look forward to sharing some ideas with all of you on leadership. Thanks.
If you were here for my talk, you know who I am, but if you came in late, I'm Bubba Wilson, outreach athletic trainer out of Memorial Hermann in Houston, Texas.
My name's Tim Moore. I'm a local athletic trainer here in town. I guess I'm just the common person for this panel, so. I've been training for 27 years, so that's probably, I guess, leadership proposal.
You fit the old category.
You are also highly involved, Tim Moore. That
Highly involved. So with our panel here, what we wanted to do was we wanted to grab different individuals within the community or within the area that we outreach to, or within the area that our athletic trainers and our sports medicine. Those obviously have involvement in SWATA, have had involvement in TSATA, have had involvement with sports medicine, have had involvement with physicians, have had involvement with athletic trainers, and have had involvement in a large, from a small to a large leadership capacity. So as we kind of go through here, I'm going to open this up to the floor and allow really anybody to answer as they see fit and as they would like. Some of these questions will be guided more towards certain individuals. But if you have any questions, then please go ahead, raise your hand. We'll add in some questions there at the end. So our first question is obviously going through the types of leadership that there are. We don't have to have them listed, but I wanted to have them listed up here for your reference. These are not what I asked these guys to talk about their style of leadership. But what I more so wanted to know is, if you had to base it in a common term, in commonality, what would your leadership be? Start with Mark.
Man, this is a really complicated question. The topic of leadership is something that Sean and I have been talking about quite a bit over the last 6 months, and so that's part of why we've decided to go this direction with the symposium. And so, what I would say about my style of leadership is it really depends upon the situation that I'm in, and that I think really dictates, the environment really dictates your style of leadership, I think, in certain situations. So for me, I end up in a situation where I have leadership responsibility within my staff at Trinity, with a professional staff, with student staff, and then I've also got leadership responsibilities within our department, within the athletic department, and within the university. So I think for me, it really varies based on the situation. But I think a lot of me is probably a little bit of a combination of laissez-faire and coaching. I feel like I kind of go in between those two things, and then also a little bit on the servant side as well.
Well, yesterday Sean sent an email, kind of prepped us, and he said that we didn't necessarily have to use these words, and that was good for me, because I look at leadership. If I had to define my style, I would say transformational. I think that you can look at things as conformational versus transformational. I don't want to have to conform my guys into my way of thinking. There's going to be an order. I want to make sure that they understand my vision. I'm very intentional about that. We go back to basics every single year so that the message is clear to everyone, whether it's a new coach coming in on staff, whether it's a first-year football player. We start at the very, very basics, but I'm very relationship-oriented, and I'm going to try to be me. And to me, that means I want to transform somebody from within, find out what makes them click, how does that fall into alignment with where we are going, so that they can then exemplify their talents and bring that to our program. Again, I don't want to conform them in, because I think that all of a sudden you get less buy-in. So I'm more of a transformational type leader. That also, obviously, it's a different spelling, but if you transform, transfer as well. I want to transfer what I have through my life experiences, through relationships and other leaders who've poured into me, transfer that, be a conduit to these young men and the guys on my staff to ultimately help them grow. So that's, there's some servanthood in there. There's also, again, a very big intentionality. And again, my style would be transformational, because I want to get in there and help them transform from within, so that all of a sudden they believe in it, and then they can transfer that. They can be a conduit in their own fields down the road as well.
Yeah, I think Coach brings up a great point, that in my experience, 80 to 90% of the time as a leader, being a transformational leader is important, because it encourages buy-in from the team and allows you to communicate clearly your vision, and you'll hear me talk about this at lunch, but communicate your vision and intent with the staff, and allows them to participate in developing processes and things that make your team successful to accomplish that vision. So, but there is a time you need to be able to transition from a transformational leader to an autocratic leader in times of crisis, if you have that within your organization, because At the end of the day, if you're the leader, and the buck stops with you, and you need to be able to become that single focus, the single point of guidance for the team in a crisis. And so recognizing when and how that happens is a bit of an art. If you transition at a bad time, then it might backfire on you, or if you remain too transformational throughout a period of time of crisis, then suddenly you start getting a whole lot of input that you don't want. And we'll go through that at lunch, but that's kind of my view.
I think my style is I'm blind with the cane trying to figure my way out. No, I'm an athletic trainer. I think you know your job, do your job. That's my style. If you have a problem, call me and we're going to work with you to figure this problem out. Where I get in trouble, me personally, is if I'm not hearing from them, then I assume everything is okay. And I can't do that. So I'm very hands-off until it hits the fan, and then you have to be very hands-on, and that becomes a problem because you were on this end of the spectrum over here, and now it's hit the fan, and I have to come way over here and do that, and I don't enjoy that. But I'm very hands-off again. I hired you for a reason. We hired you for a reason. We had a panel that agreed you were a good fit. You have the education, you have the license and certification. We expect you to go do your job. If there's a problem, call us. My job is to make sure you have all the tools you need, not the mental tools of the education, but the others, to do your job appropriately. That's my job. And then to help you out when it's needed, or to kick them in the butt when they need that too.
I'm going to apologize now. I wrote notes down because I'm a slow learner, but I would consider myself I didn't know there were some options up there. I would like to think I was a visionary because I like to see the whole. I like, hey, where do we want to be? That's what I'd like to do. And but I'm more of a transformational one. Depends on what setting you're in. If I got a partner and everything's 50-50. Unfortunately, I get paid $1,000 more and I get all the emails. So does that make me a leader? Yeah. But with our student trainers, I'm autocratic. You got look, this is how it's got to be. When we're talking about our Northeast group, I like to have the thought process. We're the Knights of the Round Table. Each person has their own thoughts, but as a joke, yeah, I'm going to listen to y'all, but we're going to do this. But somebody has to be that person to tell the higher-ups, hey, this is what we'd like. So does that make you a leader? I think it's a combination of that. And then working as a citywide, you got to make decisions for what's best for everybody. So that would be democratic on certain things like that. So it's a combination.
I think everybody's a little bit touched on this, but, and I know Tim and Mark, you both especially did. How does and what causes change in your leadership style? And why do you adjust? Why do you, let's say, pivot to change how you lead your staff, lead your students, or lead the people around you? Tim?
I think it's from, I was talking with Bubba a little while ago, experience is what changes you. I mean, what worked one day doesn't work the next day. And you have your group of people that you talk and work with, and like, oh, hey, we did that in 2013. That was awesome. Well, it's 2022. It's going to be something different. So it has to change.
As I said earlier, what hill are you willing to die on? Experience, I agree. What I worried about 10 years ago is not what's important to me now. And it shouldn't be for a lot of things. We should grow and we should change. And I also got to remind myself, I have 9 people under me in my area. Every one of their situations is totally different from the next. So we can't do a lot of cookie cutter. There's certain policies and procedures within our employer that we have to follow, and then there's certain ones within their school that they're involved in that they have to follow. But I have to realize that this athletic trainer at school A's experience and problems is totally different than this athletic trainer at this school over here. And so, again, give them enough rope to hang themselves, but knowing what I dealt with last year, I hope we've addressed and don't have to deal with again. And maybe I realize that's not that big of an issue in the grand scheme of things. We'll let that, kind of blow over, and we'll move on to something that really is important. Now, obviously, making that coach or that parent understand that sometimes is difficult, but that's human nature.
Yeah, I think situation drives a whole lot of things. And if the situation changes, you may have to change your leadership style. But it's also outcome based. So if the outcomes that you're getting as a leader aren't what you want, you may have to change your leadership style to get those desired outcomes. And the other thing, which is kind of an interesting factor that I know you guys deal with a lot, is changing personalities on your team. When you get some personalities that respond differently to different leadership styles, you've got to assess that within yourself and maybe change your leadership style based on the personality makeup of your team.
Yeah, I think that everything that's been said is 100% accurate. As a former student athlete, working alongside other colleagues who I don't want to say are, flash in the pan type programs where it'll be really good one year and maybe deteriorate the next year. There's a lot of up and down. The thing that has always struck me is when people don't know who they are, they try to lead like someone else, or they change their style like the wind, right? I mean, I know who I am, and I think there's a lot of confidence that comes with understanding who you are, who your strengths are, what your program or what your training room is built on, but having the awareness that just like all those years when Mark taped my ankle here at Trinity, he taped it differently depending on where the sprain was, where the injury was, right? Like there are different ways to attack based off of the challenges that are being presented. And I will go in and out of different styles, but at the end of the day, I'm going to remain true to who I am. The word visionary was thrown out by Tim earlier, like how do we get there? I know where I want our football program to go. I know how I can do that within the confines of my institution, right? Like I would never try to recruit or lead or do things maybe like someone else, because I know how Trinity is. And for me to reach the goal, I have to do it and lead within those parameters so that we can be successful. So how you go, I think, can be fluid, and you can attack it from a different way, and you may have to change and stay with the times. But if you don't know who you are and you don't have your core tenets of leadership that you can always come back into alignment with, I think that you're going to have a lot of just ups and downs and bumpy roads, because those underneath you aren't going to respond to some of the changes that you're implementing.
Yeah, I certainly would echo everything that's already been said. I think it is very situational, and being able to understand and adapt to the situation. Your audience is very critical. So yeah, I'd agree with all of that.
I'm going to change this one because you've all touched on this. And I'm going to change it more so to, and I'm going to throw this out to whoever wants to answer. And it's more of what factors, because of what you have all mentioned in how your leadership changes, how you adjust on the fly, what factors have created you as a leader in your past, and what factors have been beneficial and what factors have been non-beneficial?
I can answer that in one sentence. I've screwed up a lot. No, really, all joking aside, I think past experience determine what you do going forward, right? History shouldn't repeat itself, we hope. But also I think it's, we've talked about environment. What am I doing? Am I dealing with my 8-9 employees right now, or am I covering a sporting event? My leadership is different depending on what's going on. My leadership, if I'm holding C-spine on a kid on the field, is a different style and type of leadership than I'm having a staff meeting. And so you have to take, in my opinion, I have to take in what I know and what I didn't know and thought I did and screwed up on should drive future decisions and future leadership style and how we do things. Again, what I worried about 10, 15 years ago, some of those things are still there. There are hills, as I say, that I want to die on, and others are like, come on, let's move past that, let's go. We've got to deal with this. This is more pressing. And sometimes you've got to be willing to say, the buck stops with me. I'm putting my foot down. Here's what we're doing. Shut up and move forward. If you can't do that, step off and we'll talk.
You can learn a lot from failure. Use it as a tool. That's all I got to say about that. Failure's a good thing, and take your lessons, put your head down, and drive on.
Richest baseball players in the world fail 7 out of 10 times.
And I think that, to learn from failure comes humility, right? Like, you have to be willing to understand, hey, I failed here. It wasn't somebody else's fault that we failed. Sometimes that's hard for us, especially if you are very goal-driven, to not reach it and then to look introspectively and say, okay, well, hold on, we didn't reach it because of me. But having humility and being able to gather information and continue to learn, obviously I think that's invaluable. Never think you have all the answers. We had a really, really good football season this year. We have a whole lot of guys coming back next year, but we're going to do some things differently, and that's because from a humbleness standpoint, I've already done some research on how we can tweak some things. I've taken feedback from our guys, from some of our outgoing players, from some mentors who I'm constantly talking to. So again, to me, some of those factors also come with a humble mentality of how can you refine it, that we don't have all the answers.
We're going to go ahead and add Dr. Schmidt to our panel since he got done operating a little bit early. So I think everybody knows Dr. Schmidt, but we'll add him in down here.
We're going to transition more now to your practice of leadership and how you develop those under your leadership, your subordinates, your however you want to call it, assistants, the students under you, whatever that may be. So what type of factors do you as a leader take into staff development? How do you develop your staff? How do you coach, as I will ask you, how do you make your guys want to follow you through a brick wall?
So do you want me to start?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I think that I deal with a very different, I have a staff that's maybe similar to some of you. I have 5 full-time assistants, give or take every year. I'll have 5 or 6 part-time assistants. These are folks who are maybe retired high school coaches, retired college coaches who want to be around the game, but they don't want all the other stuff, right? They don't want to be in the classroom anymore. They don't want to recruit. It's a great retirement gig. So they have different responsibilities, and then we have 115, 118 guys every year, ranging from 18 to 22, dealing with a lot of different life, trying to figure out how to navigate things. So there's a wide spectrum of things. But I really think for them to understand how to run through the proverbial wall every year, they have to all be in alignment. We have to be in alignment with what the goal is. And the goal changes every year. I mean, the goal is the same, but for these young men, how they accomplish it is different. For how my coaches accomplish it is different because, like we said, we're a product of our life experiences. All of a sudden, a junior in college is going to look at life in that year differently than his first year because he's gone through two extra years. He's in a different situation. An assistant coach who now has his first baby at home. He and his wife trying to figure that out through college football season. That's a different experience for them. So being able to understand that, but like I said, I really view myself as a transformational leader. So we're going to go back to basics. I do believe that you have to have that autocratic side because the buck will ultimately stop with me. But we're going to go back every year, and we're going to, in camp, right? When a new coach comes on staff, I'm going to go through with them what our core pillars are. How can their skills supplement and bring value to us as a program growing that? And we're going to do it in a manner that I'm going to try to transfer and grow them, transform them so that they can say, okay, here are my skill sets and this is how I support the program. With the understanding, just like at home, right? We do it together, but at the end of the day, everybody at my house says, okay, if we have to find the decision, you're making it. And from an assistant coach standpoint, in terms of growing and being very clear in terms of what the expectations are, I leave no gray area in terms of office expectations, recruiting expectations for full-time versus part-time. I feel that if I give you all the parameters, you can operate freely. and then that gives me a chance to trust you. Same thing with our players. If you're a role player, a development player, hey, how do you accomplish your goal of becoming a playing time guy or a travel squad guy, and then try to transfer that to them. But I think the intentionality of what the vision is, and then a clear path, and then figuring out each person, and I mean, for me, it's 150 people within our program. How can I help them find value in what they're bringing that then brings it to the mission, ultimately knowing that I'm giving them information to help them grow so they can bring value without, like we heard a while ago, having too many cooks in the kitchen at the wrong time saying, oh, we should do this. At the end of the day, they all know it stops with me, but I want them to know that, hey, freshman or 45-year coaching experience, you guys have value in the program. Your voice is going to be heard as long as it's an idea, and if I think it brings value and helps us accomplish the goal, it'll be implemented, and you'll get the credit for it. But it's going to ultimately stop here. Long-winded answer, sorry.
I'll go with you.
Oh. You pointing
Major
me?
General. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So my last assignment, I had a staff of 724 people with 24,000 soldiers. I will just tell you there is no difference in that than there is as far as personal leadership in having a staff of 5 people and leading a small team. All of the characteristics you have to demonstrate are absolutely the same. You have to be technically and tactically, we say in the Army, but you have to be competent. And they have to know and understand that you are competent in your job. But the other thing you have to be willing to do, and I hope I have time for a short story here. When I was a company commander as a captain, I had told or a battalion commander as a lieutenant colonel, I had told all my company commanders, hey, if I don't have the corner on the market on good ideas, please, if you think I'm screwed up, come tell me. I may be the boss, and in the military things are a little more autocratic than they normally are in the rest of the world. But you got to tell me if I'm screwed up. So we had this gunnery plan for our tanks to do gunnery, and it was all great, and we'd all decided on it, and it was a good deal. We get about partway through, and this Sergeant E5, young soldier, comes up to me in the motor pool and says, sir, we're never going to get through gunnery. I said, what are you talking about? He's a maintenance sergeant. He said, sir, we haven't built in enough maintenance time in this schedule. I said, who'd you tell? He goes, sir, I've told everybody. I've told all the commanders. I've told everybody. I was so angry. I gathered all the company commanders together. I said, guys, why did it take this young sergeant, the only one that had the guts to come up to me and tell me that we needed to fix our plan? Why did you guys not? I told you, tell me. And that was a huge lesson for me about making sure that they really feel like they can come tell me as a leader that things are screwed up. Sometimes, and this happened all the way to my last assignment, sometimes they'll come and talk to me and we'll have a good discussion, and I'll say, I understand everything you're saying. I appreciate your input. These are some factors you're not aware of, and this is why I've made this decision. It's a hard thing to do, but you got to be able to do that. Keeping your subordinate leaders and your staff shut out is probably one of the worst things you can do, and it happens in a stressful environment, and that's part of that transition from a transformational leader to an autocratic leader, and knowing when and how to do that. And then the other thing about building a staff and teams is personalities. How many of y'all have taken a personality profile? Right? Everybody's done it. It's hugely important as you build a team, a staff, a group of folks with a single purpose, to understand that you've got personalities that are different enough to accomplish the mission you're trying to accomplish. I do not ever want a team of me. I like me, but I don't want a team of me, because we will never get anything done. We'll all sit there and talk about the vision and how far, but not one of us can tell us how to get there. And so building your staff around different personalities, you have to have details people, you got to have visionary people, you got to have process people. And if you can work through personality profiles with your team, you might be able to understand how different people think on your team and really start to get them to gel and put people in the right places.
One of the things we do, so for us, there are almost 50 athletic trainers employed with Memorial Hermann. And so those of us that are fortunate or unfortunate, depending on your outlook that day, of drive one of the trucks, we have bi-weekly staff meetings, and there's a few others that are there that have certain jobs that attend these meetings, but we offer open access to anybody on our team of athletic trainers to come sit in on those. Now, they don't want to do it because they have to drive and it takes time out of their day, and they're scared of us or whatever, right? But what we started doing a couple of years ago is all the people that are farmed out to these schools, so to speak, that aren't in this leadership side, they come one time a year, they come present to us. Now, we don't get all 35, 38 of them in 1 year, but they come and present to us for 30 minutes on something athletic training related. It could be a case report, it could be some rehab technique, whatever it is, and then we give them opportunities throughout the year. We do a sports medicine conference. We give them the opportunity to be involved in that. They can present. We had one, she's in her 3rd year, that said, you know what? You guys are old Luddites and don't understand computers, and she was right. I'm going to take over how we can do the electronic survey to make it simpler. And she did. And she did a great job. So we give them opportunity. I think we need to do a better job of reminding them there's opportunity, but we also try to reward them. One of mine that was in a middle school situation, she did a great job. Her personality fit with an opening that we had that put her in a high school. So we tell them when we hire you, we don't want you here forever. We want you to promote up. And, you know, now, if you're old and you just want to finish out with us, we get it, but we want you to move, and we want you to leave us and go to a school district as a school district employee, not necessarily with us. I don't know why you would, because our benefits are better. But we tell them that up front. We tell them what their job requirement is, what the expectation is, and then we make sure they know that, and then say, if you got a problem, you got to tell us. But we don't just say, hey, here you go, here's your ID badge and your login, good luck to you. You know, it's similar to, here's our blocking scheme, and here's how we're going to do this, and here's how you know, coaches, one semester away from MD, but, you know, those guys, God bless them, here's how we huddle, right? Here's how we do this. Your foot's in the wrong position on your first step to go block. It screws up the entire play, and it does. They do a great job of dumbing it down and breaking it down, and I think we, as leaders, and I'll just speak for myself, I think we've got to do a better job of that sometime and say, look, let's go through this. I want to make sure you understand the expectation, because if I didn't give you the expectation, then that's on me as a leader, and it stops with me, right? I have to own that. But if I gave you the expectations and you're not meeting that, now we've got to have a different conversation.
Mine has always been lead by example, either with our student trainers at school or with my coworkers in our district. I mean, I want to make sure they don't think I'm not doing anything, so I want to do a little extra. That's why we give responsibilities to our student trainers. Like, look, we got some veteran student trainers, we got some rookie student trainers. You got to work your way up. And I'm cleaning whirlpools, I'm spraying benches, I'm doing certain things, taking the water out. So they see that, wow, we're, you know, not alike, but if he's able to do that, then we're going to be able to do it. So it kind of gives them a sense of ownership of what they're doing. We do the same thing as our district. Again, I like the term Knights of the Round Table. I mean, no one's ahead of anybody, but say one school's in charge of concussion management, one school's in charge of EAPs, one school's in charge of rank 1 or physicals or whatever it is. It gives them a sense of ownership, saying, hey, we're a part of this group, and if that makes, I feel like I can either leaders lead or leaders lead from the back. It's kind of a combination of both. But the sense of ownership is the staff development part of getting everybody involved, and a sense of that they're contributing to the process.
I have been very fortunate for almost 30 years to be involved with the Spurs organization, and as a lot of y'all know, it has been a place where a lot of young coaches started, and so that's kind of been my philosophy. When I interview somebody to be part of our team, I try to find out what their goals are. And if I can't ascertain that they have goals, I try not to hire them. It's kind of like a personality. I want to know, are you aspiring to move up? And if I make the hire, then I tell them sometimes, I fully expect you to be gone in 4 or 5 years because I want to grow you up. I like the statement somebody made, and I don't know who it was, leaders build leaders. And so our goal is to build each individual, and you kind of have to know that person first, know their personality, know their aspirations, and what inspires them. And then the other thing, and I think Bubba mentioned, or Tim mentioned it, that for me, there's no job below me. I mean, sometimes if we're busy in the operating room, I'll mop the operating room floor. I do it for the hell of it, but also to help the staff understand, hey, we're all part of the team. And any job that needs to be done can be done by anybody. And so those are kind of my keys.
Real quick, just because when you said that, Dr. Schmidt, it reminded me, I think there's some pride as an athletic trainer of, I had a student go to college to be an athletic trainer that I hired back. There's some pride in that. That's one of mine, right? And it should be the same thing with a surgeon or a soldier. They go up and you're like, I trained them. They're mine. There's a hell of a lot of pride in that. It's phenomenal. And, we've got some people I dealt with that go, yeah, we hired them. Why'd they leave? Because they needed to be where they're at right now. The same thing. We want you to go away. But there's a ton of pride of, they're one of mine. And to me, that matters.
Can I add one more thing? From a development standpoint, one of the things that we do every year, throughout the year, in the fall, we have a leadership council. And a lot of people, will have a leadership council. And I don't know what it means for others, but for us, it's a development program. Okay, so we'll have 12 to 15 young men every single fall. They meet with me every Friday morning. We're a morning practice team. Friday's supposed to be the day they get to sleep in. Those 12 to 15 young men come in and meet with me for an hour, and we go through a curriculum during the fall. And then to build life skills, those guys then have to write a letter of recommendation for a younger guy on the team to come and take their place in the spring on the leadership council. So I could get into a lot of funny stories about telling guys, hey, is this really a letter of recommendation that you think somebody would hire your buddy off of? Right? So we can teach that. But what it does is the mentality, like Dr. Schmidt said, of growing leaders. And I think that there's a ton of value in empowerment, especially verbal. Like when I can bring those younger guys in the spring and say, hey, you were chosen by your peers. And they all know. Some guys are already there. They're already viewed as leaders. Others have potential, but they've got a lot of rough edges that need to be smoothed out. But knowing that someone selected them, whether in the fall as a coach or in the spring as a peer, that they have leadership qualities, all of a sudden they're more invested in that development. And some of them, Mark can tell you, it takes them 2, 3, 4 years. But we've seen the potential, and it's the first time that they've had someone tell them that they've had potential, and then they're circled back around this thing. But we really want to try to breed and develop and be very hands-on in that. So after every one of those Friday leadership council meetings, I go back up to our office and meet with the staff, and we go through it with the staff in a very abbreviated way, not quite as in-depth, but I make sure that the staff understands what we just talked about so that not only can they circle back, but that gives me a weekly chance to plant other seeds within my staff for development from them as well. So it's not just football and X's and O's development, but hey, this is what these guys are doing. We're all working to elevate Trinity football. So it gives me a chance to give them power to talk to these young men, but also keep dropping nuggets of leadership development into them. They get it year-round as a staff, so I'm not having a whole bunch of long meetings or retreats or anything. That's been really good for us. And then one last thing, it's a little bit off, but somebody said something and made me think about this. I used to get a lot of thoughts and recommendations from players on how to tweak things, right? Like everybody had a list, or you'd hear rumblings. A handful of years ago, I put outside my door, and they know. They get reminded at the beginning of the year, mid-semester, both semesters. We've got a suggestion box outside my door, and You can come, you can put your name on it, hey, if you don't want to put your hand up or drop, we no longer have any suggestions. And it's been great. I mean, I have this thing out there, and for real, nobody puts anything in, and all of a sudden, a lot of the talking, well, we should do this. I'm like, well, you never told me. You could have suggested this, and we could have talked. It's nipped it. So sometimes giving them a chance to talk, maybe your students or your staff would just stuff in. It's gone the other way for me. So food for thought.
Made him put it in writing.
I think one of the things, though, we are all talking about leadership, but they have to be willing to be led. We can lead that horse to water, as that goes. But, and again, I try to give my people opportunities. Hey, what do you see we need to help with you? Oh, it's all good. Well, if it's all good and we don't know, you didn't know that y'all hadn't planned maintenance for that, then we can't evolve and get better. And so, if you're given if somebody gives you a task, take it. And we were talking about it earlier. I think one of the best things in the world you can say as an athletic trainer or as an individual is, I don't know, but either I'm willing to learn or I know who knows the answer. Let's go see him. I don't have all the answers. I don't have a clue on a lot of things. And if you know me, you know that's the truth. And I'm willing to say I don't know, but I'm also willing to go try to find the answer. And that's huge to me. Hey, are you willing to do this, Tim? Yeah, I don't know much about it, but I'll take it on. Okay, cool, great. That in my head says he's willing to go above and beyond. He's somebody we may want to look at for this, or I may want to nominate so-and-so for this. That's important. But if they're in the back of the room like this and they're never doing anything but shaking their head, you never call on me. Well, because every time you're disagreeing with everything we do. So you've got to be willing to step up and take over some tasks, and sometimes take over some tasks that aren't the most pleasant things in the world either.
Can I ask you a question on that? So, and this could go for the maintenance example. This year, one of the things that I started doing, you ask, hey, how are you doing? Everybody, I'm doing great. So, or things are good, coach. Or, hey, are we prepared to stop this? Yeah, we feel good. I've started following up with, well, why do you feel good about it? A lot of times I feel like we're busy or we're ready to get to the next thing. So when they give you the affirmative, you're like, okay, cool. But I started asking my students, great, what makes it a great day? And it's like,
crap, now I'm on the spot.
Or asking my coordinators, yeah, we feel good. Well, why do you feel good about it? And then getting them to follow up with something, because I think we're just so, we all want to present the good face. We all want to present the strong preparedness. But then that follow-up question has really either led to some great conversations with some of my students who maybe weren't really having a great day, or it unearthed some things within our staff that made us better prepared on Saturday, because we just asked a quick follow-up. And if they can't give a quick, boom, this is why, then maybe you can dig a little bit more. So
I think I agree with you, but I think what it also says is when you ask that to me and you have a follow-up question, he actually is honestly asking about me, not just going down the hall and asking a question to look like he's asking a question, that he actually cares.
Anybody else? Add to that? Mark? One point that I want to actually point out that Major General mentioned was the personality test. That is something that up until my wife actually had started telling me, she's so much smarter than I am, had started telling me about that and what she does with her residents and fellows and anyone that comes in the ICU with her. She started utilizing that, and it was basically adaptive to their learning style and how they work and how they function. And I believe Major General is going to talk a little bit more about some of the books and some of the information of that later on, and probably touch on some of that stuff. But for me personally, that has been something that now I do with any of my students, that I actually utilize and learn a lot from them and their aspects of that. So the next one that we're going to go to is kind of following along with that is how in other ways do you pass leadership opportunities? I know some of us have touched on this. How do you pass leadership opportunities? We've talked about I lead and I try to I wash the coolers and I do this. But what are things that you do that you put people in these leadership positions that they may not know that you're doing it?
I'll give you a real easy one real quick. We all have strengths and weaknesses in our profession, and I'm not embarrassed to say it, but rehab is one of my worst ones. I hate rehab, but I got a partner that just is the king of rehab, and I'm like, dude, whatever you need, you let me know, and I'm going to help you without him knowing it. And I'll take care of the paperwork, I'll take care of this and that, but if he's happy thriving where he's at, and I'm happy letting him thrive, that's a great opportunity for him.
Yeah, I would tell you, taking people out of their comfort zone is a huge deal. They may not like it, but you have to recognize that they have the potential to do it, and then give them a hard job, and let them go, and support them, give them the tools they need, because 9 times out of 10 in my experience, they've surprised themselves and they've done an outstanding job, and that opens the door to new opportunities for them. And in a 35-year career, I can tell you that there are at least 3 or 4 assignments that I was given that I went, oh God, that's going to be awful. I don't know if I want to do that. Turned out to be one of the greatest assignments and beneficial assignments and learning experiences for me. Took me out of my comfort zone into another area that I didn't know, and then created so many more opportunities down the road. And so looking at your team and helping develop them outside of that one special comfort zone is part of your leadership responsibilities, just to help develop your team. And it goes back to you always want, in the military it's easy because we do things 2 years at a time. Every assignment's 2 years, and you want to see your guys that have been on your teams grow. And this last assignment, I had some full colonels who were lieutenants for me when I was a lieutenant colonel, and it does your heart good to look at, man. Well, now they're retiring, so all that means is I'm old, but it's fantastic to watch them. And several of those guys, I put into some really uncomfortable jobs for them that were not where they were normally working. So I think it's important that you know your team well enough to want to push them outside the nest a little bit and develop them a little bit better as you go forward.
I think some of the things we give them, it goes back to personalities, but we have ours present. We ask ours, hey, take over a breakout room at our sports medicine update that we do. Hey, your job is to go greet all these physicians and speakers, get their PowerPoint. If we don't have it, make sure they know what they're doing. Well, I don't even know who they are. That's fine. You'll recognize them. It's good. Giving them any and everything opportunity they can to get involved. As I said earlier, my start came from, hey, you're going to help us at GHATS up our membership. Okay, what are we doing? We don't know. We're going to meet and figure it out. And it was incredibly fun, and it just snowballed. I gave up days in the summer to go round with Dr. Lowe in clinic and to watch surgery. That led to me getting a job with Dr. Lowe. I didn't do it to get a job with Dr. Lowe. I did it to get better. So it's giving them an opportunity, but then it's on the flip side, it's me showing that I want that opportunity to get better. And over time, I want it to be, that's one of mine.
I got time for a quick story. Am I okay? Or do we need to move? Do I have time for a quick story? Okay. So everybody knows Mark Milley, right? Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff. Some hate him, some love him. I had an opportunity to serve with him when he was a 1-star in Afghanistan. I had a member of my team who had worked on a project when we were in Afghanistan, and he was a young captain. And I said, okay, Gabe, you're going to be the guy that presents this to General Milley. And General Milley was a scary son of a gun. I'm telling you, man. Back then, as a 1-star, he was, chewing up nails, and I mean, he was tough. And he looked at me and said, "Sir, do I have to do that? I don't want to do that. I don't want to brief him." And I said, "Gabe, you're fine. You're going to be just fine." And it didn't help things that as we sat outside his office, I said, "I'll go in there with you if you need some backup. It'll be fine." And sitting outside his office, we heard him screaming at a brigade commander up in the north that had some challenges. And I asked the Secretary of the General Staff, I said, is it okay, or do we need to come back? He goes, no, he'll be fine. And my guy was just dying. It was awesome. And so we go in there, and Gabe did fine. He briefed him. I could tell he's a little nervous, but he did fine. And Millie asked him to come back and brief him on several more occasions. Fast forward several years, Gabe is a battalion commander in the Horn of Africa, or in the Sinai, and Millie is the Chief of Staff of the Army. And they had an incident. Soldiers got attacked, some injuries, nobody killed. Millie was in Europe, decided to fly down and present Purple Hearts to these kids that got hurt, and instantly saw Gabe Simons, who he had not seen for 10 years before. Knew him, spoke to him, and it was one of those things where if I had not shoved him into that job, he wouldn't have gotten the same recognition, ended up getting promoted again, and ended up being very successful. But he had to be pushed out of that comfort zone. If he hadn't have been, he wouldn't have gotten those great opportunities. I think in y'all's field, that happens a lot. I mean, you get new opportunities with new coaches, new administrations, and you get thrown into the breach. It's a good thing, and help your guys move into that too. And as you get them out of their comfort zone, put some responsibility on their shoulder, get them out in front talking to people, and they may not want to, but sometimes you just got to push them there.
Did you, in those briefings, did you have to go in and sit with him, or did you choose to do that the first time?
Only the first time.
Okay.
After that, I didn't.
So this year, reference, we had a really good season. We have some really special guys on our offense and defense, but I had been calling our offensive plays, and I loved it. The thought of doing it with some of these new guys stepping into some of these roles this year was very, very appealing. But for the betterment of our team and our program, and for me to free up and do some other things, I went ahead and gave the full play calling duties to my offensive coordinator. And he was fully prepared. I knew he was prepared. But there were a lot of times during the year, a couple of really big regular season games, some extremely tense moments, my gut, my heart wanted to come in as a competitor and say, hey, think about this. Instead, and there were times he asked me, what do you want? What would you do? I said, you got it. You're doing a great job. Right? Like, I had to discern as the ultimate leader when to impart a suggestion. A lot of my suggestions this year with him were in some moments that really didn't matter. Hey, think about this trick play. Hey, think about this. Do this. But I wanted him to learn through those extremely tense briefings, so to speak, so that down the road for the betterment of our program, because if I never let him walk through those, he knew I was there, and I would encourage him. If I didn't let him feel that, if he could just always turn to me to do the hard stuff, then he wouldn't grow and our program wouldn't grow. Even though selfishly I'd love to say, well, I called that play, right? But he needed to feel it. If I had given him the role, I needed to trust that he was good enough in that intense moment. Fully knowing the moment, just like some of you who are over, students or staff, like there are going to be moments you have to step in and say, no, we're going to do it this way. But I think that was a great example of you just sitting there, giving him the comfort, knowing that you're there, but you didn't take over for him just because General Milley was maybe coming off of a tense moment that could bleed over. You let him feel that and gain confidence. So I think that's invaluable too when you're trying. Once you give it, let him feel it and grow through those tense moments. Don't have a savior complex and always come in and try to save the day and do it for him.
Did he ever call a play that you would have never thought of that worked, and you go, damn right, that's why I heard him?
I think a lot of the confidence of giving it over to him is that we were usually on the same page, but there were a couple of times, yes, and it worked out very, very well. And those are those proud moments too, right? Like, you're like, man, yeah, that was good job by me to give him that because he called a great play.
Full credit to the head coach.
I think that's one of the most difficult parts of trying to be a leader or being a leader, and that's delegating. Because, we got to a position that we are because we're hard-headed, sometimes stupid, oftentimes, and we think we can do it better than anybody. And the ability to delegate and even as a head athletic trainer, telling either your student athletic trainers, hey, I need you to do this for me. And that's what I've tried to do is give projects or educational opportunities to fellows. I never hardly ever look up anything medically anymore because I have fellows. I say, I don't know much about X. Could you research that for me? And it does two things. It makes them do their job and educate themselves, but it helps educate me. And I do that with our staff also. I'll go to our staff and say, is there a process that we need to do better for patient, care or for patient service? And in fact, we have what's called the Benjamin Award, which is, I don't know if y'all know what a Benjamin is, but it's on a $100 bill. And so in our office, the staff knows that once every month, whoever provides the best idea for customer service or patient care will get a $100 bill. And it makes them think that, and we always tell them, we don't have to always do it the way we've always done it. If you see something that we can do better, let us know and we'll reward you for it. And one other thing that we haven't mentioned, but I think there have been a number of studies that have shown that employees, it's not always about the money. And I think, if I'm not correct, General, you probably know better, but one of the number one complaints of staff is underappreciation. We don't take the opportunity, whether it's your student athletic trainer or my MA who's just working her tail off, to say, hey, great job. They do a good job, and so often the only time we communicate is when they do something wrong. And so always searching for the opportunity to give them a pat on the back, a Starbucks gift card or something, I think is really, really important.
Dr. Schmidt, I'm going to give away a Walt Lowe trade secret on that. He was very, very good to us on, say, a Friday. He'd get done with surgery early, and he would call the office and say, send it to the answering service, meet me at such and such, drinks are on me. It was small, right? It was a little thing, but how do you not want to work hard for that guy?
Can I get on the list?
What, sir?
I'll drive to Houston.
Come on. We can find his credit card. I think the other thing, though, with Dr. Schmidt, you kind of brought it up, but we have to give them sometimes the why. We have to tell them why we're doing something the way we're doing it. Again, as I talked earlier, because I said so is a great parent line, but it doesn't work in anything else. And we have to say, this is why we are doing X, Y, and Z. And if I can explain that to them, like, okay, I understand. And now they may not have full buy-in, but they got a whole lot more buy-in than what we had previously, and we're doing it because of this. Okay, and let's get it done, and we talk about it later and go, is there another way we could have done this if it didn't work out, or maybe it did? We can have those debriefings, which I think is also an important thing, and I know in the military that happens a lot, but we have to give them the why. And if I know the what and the why, I'm good. Well, you're just going to do this.
I'm gonna cut us off, and I apologize because I know we're in a really good place and moving forward. But as we need to rotate down to maybe dining hall to get ready for lunch and then get ready for our talk down there. One thing I do want to advise is that as you are coming back up here, please look at your